Hey everyone, it's Megan from Alder and Nance, and today I wanted to share with you the Golden Rule Lutterloh pattern 38 from Supplement 317 that I made for my daughter Ryan. All of the Golden Rule patterns are made using a special ruler that you see me working with here. This allows you to grade out these little quarter scale patterns to any size using just two measurements, your hips and bust. Now, I must say I am new to garment construction, and this is the fourth project I have used the Golden Rule for. So this isn't really a tutorial, but more of a learn alongside me. The fabric that I'm using is from Joann's that I found in the clearance section. It's the sportswear stretch twill in the color peach skin. What you now see me cutting is the flutter sleeve, but I wish I had used a pattern hack for this to make the sleeve slightly more full. One of the things that I always seem to forget to do is to interface my facings, and what you see me using here is a straight stitch on the facing for Ryan's dress. Now I take it over to my ironing board and I just iron open those seams. And I know I'm not real proficient at ironing, but this is how I go about ironing right now. I know I don't need to be dragging my iron across the fabric because that stretches it out, which I learned later in the project. Now, since I don't actually have a serger, I go ahead and use my overlocking foot, and I also use my blanket stitch. I just run this blanket stitch right across the edging that's not going to be finished inside of the garment. Then I take that back to the ironing table to go ahead and set those stitches. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up both the front and the back bodice and go ahead and pin those together and get it ready to take over to the sewing machine. Now that I'm back over here, I'm going to go ahead and change my foot back out to my regular presser foot and set my machine to a straight stitch. And one thing that I have learned about sewing is you always go from the inside of the neck to the outside of the shoulder. That way it sits properly whenever you're wearing it. Now, one of the things that I realized right around here is that I did not go ahead and stitch along the neckline, and that's one of the things that also I noticed whenever I was going to put the facing on the neckline, is that my neckline had stretched out slightly, and also the facing had stretched because I hadn't put the stabilizer on it. But once again, I forgot to go ahead and stitch that and went ahead and overlocked the shoulder seams. I'm hoping in the future to go ahead and get a overlocker or serger so I can do this a lot quicker too. My Everstone sewing machine is wonderful, I love it, but I do wish I had a little bit more of a different equipment too. Now you actually see me stay stitching my neckline. Now I'm going to go ahead and go around the garment and overlock all of the different edges. The reason why I'm overlocking all of the edges of this garment is because I am not going to line it. It's just a simple one-layer garment. Now I'm going to go ahead and take out my rolled hem to do a rolled hem on the sleeves before I attach it. And of course I wanted to show winding up my bobbin because I was running out of bobbin thread again. Now this is like the second or third time that I've used the rolled hem foot, and it works out pretty well. I had learned a couple of tips and tricks to go ahead and straight stitch first and then use the thread to go ahead and wrap the fabric up inside of the foot to get it going. It's not completely perfect, but Ryan still loves this dress, and that's all that really matters to me. If you see, some of the edges did get caught outside of the rolled hem. With Ryan growing like a weed, I sometimes realize that she's going to outgrow some of the outfits that I make her pretty quickly. Now back to my ironing station and trying to press out some of the wrinkles on the flutter sleeve, which ended up helping to get the sleeve to sit into the actual armhole. And looks like I had not gone ahead and overlocked the edges of her dress yet. Now I'm just pinning this while the garment's still open. I hadn't gone ahead and seamed up the side seam. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch you over to a different view, which I think I'm going to use this view from now on in all of my videos until I get a mount to mount this up above the sewing machine so you can actually see what I'm doing. But I also need to clean my machine, it looks like. After I take it off the machine, I'm going to go ahead and trim off all of the excess and then overlock those seams together so I can press them out. Ignore my messy office/sewing room. It's in the middle of a move and change for the rest of our house too. Now I'm going to go ahead and overlock that and get it all into a nice smooth little area for it to sit together and not separate and be kind of itchy for Ryan. Here you see me pinning together the side seam to go ahead and seam that together. And I'm going to stitch this with a straight stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and, after putting interfacing onto my facing, I'm going to go ahead and stitch that on with a straight stitch. And you can see me here trying to manipulate the fabric where it sits pretty evenly. After some work and tweaking, I was able to get that to sit pretty evenly. Now I'm just going to clip the edges because this is a very round neckline. I do want to go ahead and snip into this all the way up to the stitching line as best I can. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch the facing to the seam allowance. And you can see where I did the stitching around the neckline to stabilize that. And I'll go in here in a minute with a seam ripper and rip those stitches out that you can see along the neckline. When putting this pattern together, when you're putting a pattern together with the golden rule, you do have to add in your own seam allowance. And with this one, I added about 1/2 inch. And on the neckline, I did add a 1/4 inch and forgot that whenever I was going through to stabilize the neckline. Now I've taken this back over to my ironing table and I'm just pressing this nice and flat, or as best I can. You'll see in a minute I use my tailor's ham to wrap the neckline around it to really set that also. That's something that I learned from Gertie from Charm Patterns. So, as you know, I made a mistake in making my video this week. And that is, I didn't record cutting the skirt part of this dress, gathering it, sewing it to it, or hemming. As you know, this is my second video on this channel, and I am still learning how to make videos while I sew. Plus, this is the 4th or 5th item that I've made using the Lutterloh system, and probably just a handful more of other sewing projects that I have done. This is the finished dress that I made for Ryan, and yes, it is wrinkled. This fabric really wrinkled really bad, and this is the first time that I have done a invisible zipper, so it's not perfect, like at all. A little bit on this pattern, as I said earlier in the video, I wish I had added more flutter to the sleeve by slicing it open and spreading it to get more flutter here. And then, as you know, I am new, and the next thing that I wish I had done was actually go in and added more skirt to this. I didn't have much fabric left, and I just barely gathered this, and I did learn quite a bit on gathering on my Eversewn sewing machine. It came out okay, but I wish there was more volume to the skirt. The other thing that I did is I used hemming tape instead of actually hemming this. With Ryan, she's growing. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time hand stitching the hem to her dress. So I just used the hemming tape and went quickly around it with a hemming tape that I picked up from Walmart. Another thing is with this piece right here, the facing on here, I wish I had gone ahead and made this a lot larger, because when I washed this the other day, it just popped right out. I don't really have much room to actually stitch this down on the inside of it, and I feel that if it had more room, if it was a little bit larger, it wouldn't have popped out as easily and not gone back in. And that might also be part of the fabric choice that I used for this. So I did go ahead and stitch around the neckline. That's another thing, Ryan does not like the neckline on this. So for her next little project, now the child has hundreds of clothes in there, so most of the videos you're going to see is for myself, Skylar, my oldest daughter, and my husband James is what you'll see most of the time on this channel. I just wanted to start out with a small project for the second video on here. So if you want to join me on my adventure in learning to sew and working with fabric textiles, go ahead and hit a like and subscribe. Bye!